Forward this to my computer. All right, so hey everyone, welcome to today's webinar. I'm here with Max Thomas and James Martin, both professors of practice down at Georgia State University. They're going to be talking to us about LoRa's, like we were just talking about. Not LoRa the name, but LoRa's when it comes to AI terms. They'll be explaining that a little bit more later. I'm going to share my screen here in just a moment. But anything you guys want to say to just greet the crowd before we get started?
Sure. What's up? I'm Professor of Practice James Martin, Revolution Certified Trainer of 20 years, and going to be taking you through how we utilize the tools today to actually create the LoRa's that we've been talking about.
Cool.
How's it going? I'm Max Thomas. At once we get through our LoRa training, I'll take you through and we'll get Run Comfy up and going and show you kind of some results of what we're able to create with the LoRa that we make during this training session. So I'm also a professor of practice at Georgia State University and really love sharing any type of information about AI. So let's dive in.
Right on. Before we get started, just a couple things to go through about the webinar. As always, we are recording this for posterity. So if you have to step away for coffee, bathroom break, or whatever, don't worry. We'll send you a link to the completed video after today's webinar, probably on Monday. We'll send you that. It's also being live broadcast on our YouTube channel. But we're not going to be answering questions from YouTube if you're watching live on YouTube, just so you're aware. We are on Zoom, and you need to ask questions on Zoom. And we're going to have a Q&A session at the end of today's webinar. So if you have any questions throughout the webinar, just put them in the Q&A panel in Zoom there, and we'll get to those a little bit later on. Feel free to chat in the Zoom panel as well. I'll be kind of moderating the chat. Let's keep it clean. Um, Anyways, yeah, I think that's about it. We will be sending out a survey as well at the end of today's webinar. So if you have any topics you want to learn about in the future, any feedback you have, just feel free to let us know. I will be emailing that to you. And also, we'll give you a 10% discount for the content store, which is stackable with any other promos we have going on right now. So I'm going to share my screen really quick before we get started. I'm going to hand it over to James and Max in just a moment here. Let's just share this. And hopefully you can see my screen right now. We just have a few promo things to go through. For those of you who aren't aware, we officially launched Character Creator 3 this week, which is it was a long time coming. A lot of work went into it. So we hope you guys are happy with it. Some really, really cool features. A lot of us have just started using it this week. So yeah, explore. Go ahead and explore. There's a few things you can take a look at. We have the brand new Actor Mixer plugin that is available with Character Creator 5. We have this CC5 Deluxe promo going on, so it includes the core library of Actor Mixer, Ultimate Morphs, which you can add to your Actor Mixer library, as well as the Human Anatomy set. If you're not really aware of all these things, not familiar with them, just feel free to check out this page here. I'll throw this in the chat window for everyone. Where's my chat window? There we go. Good luck with the servers this time around. Thanks, Chris. Break a leg. All right. So yeah, you can check out this page on your own time. It's just a few promos we have going on, launch promos for Character Creator 5. Highly recommend checking out all these things if you're interested. All right. And we do have an official announcement. I'm going to throw this into our chat window as well. This is from our forum, an official announcement from our forum. So we will have an update for AI Render plugin on Monday, I believe. It says Monday here, right? September 1st. I think that's a Monday. Yep, probably. And so make sure you update all your stuff before then. If you're having issues, you can kind of just reinstall the previous versions right now and just maybe take a break over the weekend or whatnot. But I know a lot of you won't be able to do that. But check out this page. We always have the latest updates for what's going on in the world of AI Render plugin. And we'll be talking about that in just a moment. In addition, I don't have the page open, but if you are an educator or a student, like our friends here from GSU, you get a 60% discount from the content store. You can go to the Reillusion main page here. I'll just do it real quick. Go to Learn and go to Global Training Network, and you'll see the educational discount at the top. And you can apply for a 60% discount off of all of our animation software. And this is the biggest discount we offer. So if you're a student or a teacher, make sure you check this out. Fill out the form here and just send it in to us, and you'll get that discount code, which is completely awesome.
Hey, that's me.
Oh, this, yeah, this is James right here. Back when he was a younger and handsomer version of James. No, I'm just kidding.
It's like 3 weeks ago, Kai.
Yeah, 3 weeks. Man, you've aged. No, I'm just kidding.
Oh,
All right, well that's basically all I need to go through. Let's save the rest of the time for Max and James, who are going to blow your mind with some AI render, batch render stuff using LoRa's. I'll let them explain it right now. So I'll stop my sharing, and you guys can pick up the sharing whenever you want. So whoever's going first, and we'll get
cool.
started.
Tag, I'm it. So we'll get started with basically a couple of things and appreciate you stuck on. We don't need the good luck today for RunPod. We've got everything up and stable for everybody. And essentially, we're going to take you through building a RunPod for the purpose of training a LoRA or a low ranking adaptation model. We're going to start in Character Creator, and I'm essentially going to show you a custom character, and this is going to be something that is another base character, but it's not going to be Kevin or Camilla. We'll walk that through to iClone and show you a custom project that Actor Capture uses to generate the 24 images needed, or the 26 images that is needed to train a efficient LoRA and keeping those file sizes low. So we're going to go ahead and get started now, and I'm going to share my screen.
So we're ideally targeting a 26 image LoRa. That's really kind of where we found the best result set and also the most optimized, efficient training for that. So typically 26 to 41, you're going to get really good results. If you drop down to like 15, you may get a little bit of variance. It may not quite hold as well as it will at 26, but you also don't need 1,000 images or 500 images is not going to make this better. Even 76 could be overtrained. So keep it simple, guys. Just 26 to 41.
So I'm just going to load up Kevin very quickly to just make sure everybody's familiar with our base character creator sort of default avatar. And we've talked about how we've created the Kevin and the Camilla Loras based on our character designs here. But Real Illusion has a lot of robust content and many character bases to start from. So do you have to have a Kevin or a Camilla? Absolutely not. And I'm just loading up Kevin now, and you can see that character creators very malleable and able to hot swap characters very quickly. Most of you out there that are Real Illusion users are very versed in the flexibility of the tool and the ability to create many different character designs on the fly. And as you can see, we've got our shaders loading now for Kevin, but you're going to find all this content in your template tab. And of course, this is in the clothes folder under our character structure. But if I come over and I come into my custom tab, I've also got some actors and some projects saved for Real Illusion as well. And so we can dive down into some of those and have a look at a couple of different character designs. So May being one of those that comes from the CC3 character base. So I can quickly hot swap, replace all. Obviously, I've got some wardrobe options there. I could actually change the character and keep the wardrobe. You can play around with really being able to go from one character base to another very quickly. And as you can see, in the time it takes me to explain it, we've changed to May here. So if I hit hotkey J, I'll move to the face of this character, and I've already got a nice sort of female character design with custom hair. And of course, if we go to F or hotkey for the front of our character, we can kind of see that wardrobe in its entirety. Now, if we need to make some adjustments before we go into starting to generate these images, we can do that very quickly. For example, if I've got some poke through here on the pants, I can quickly just select those pants and go into our conform and hide edit mesh tool if we want to kind of suss that out and make that a little better. However, in our hide body mesh tool, we can kind of quickly choose different sections of the body to hide. So if I've got some problems around those ankle areas, I can choose advanced, and then I can start to just hide the legs here. And I'm also mirroring. So if we come down here and select hide for that, and anywhere that we kind of select that out, we can get some of those problem areas kind of solved. Okay. We can close that, and we can also, if we're not going to see that in the image, we can just go ahead and send that over to iClone. So I'm going to do that again by just coming up here and selecting my character. And you can see that that yellow bounding box just indicates that we've got our character selected. And this is all very basic functionality for Character Creator. Obviously, you can go into a world of editing tools over here in the Modify panel to adjust many different things about the mesh or the overall look of the character. But now we're going to go ahead and go into iClone. So I'm going to
Hey
send that to
James, really
iClone.
quickly, can you
Sure.
see if you can move your chat window off screen over there? It's blocking your panel for
Oh,
the
gotcha.
viewers.
No problem.
Yeah. Just
Sorry
wanted
about
to let
that.
you know before we went too much further there.
Yeah, I appreciate that,
Perfect.
Max. Yeah, good looking out. So over inside of iClone, I've also got some projects that we've pre-made, and these are also part of default content that you have when you install iClone. So I've got iClone 8 open here, and if I go into project, an IC project, and I drill down into some of the default content that I like to dissect. I like to ask all my students to kind of go through this and become familiar with the tool through some of these default projects, because Reallusion does an amazing job of breaking each feature set sort of down. And one of those that's actually pretty great for everybody is the uh, four character folder that has the Talking Kevin project. And we adapted that project to kind of create our own LoRa I project. And I'm getting ready to show you that and a couple of variations of it. Also, Reallusion has a LoRa project set up for you that you can download again from the forum. So you can get that and access that and break down your LoRa's like that or build your own. Today, we're going to be showing you the whole build your own process. Okay. So, for example, if I load that project up, we can double click that, but you could start there as a starting point with great lighting and a couple of good camera angles. And Reallusion's already set that up for you. I've taken that a step further, and essentially here we'll have a look at a couple of different LoRa Gen projects that are built specifically from that default content. And you can see here that also if I expand my timeline out, you can always pop that open with hotkey F3, you can kind of see what's under the hood here. And so you can see I've got some different poses, some different cameras, and I'm utilizing the camera switcher tool to kind of go through these. So each individual frame is going to be a different image that's going to be part of this 26 image LoRa set. Okay. And I also have some facial expressions and some poses. So there is animation in this project. And these can be any poses and really any facial expressions. And they can be a wide range. So if I select this character and I actually went into my animation and my expression strength, you can see that we can adjust all of that here should we have some more expressive, happy, sad, or angry sort of variation in our face. But this is mostly about the lighting and also generating these images that are going to be used to maintain a consistent look to a character wardrobe and a character's overall look and feel, like Camilla or Kevin. But in this case, it can be any character. So as you can see, I have this character selected, and if I go back over and use that send to iClone button again, it will inherit the animation that I've already built in this project. And this is great because you only have to build kind of your LoRa project once or use the Reallusion template once, and you can see that it will prompt you to ask if you want to override that animation. I'm actually going to inherit all of that, so I'm going to say no. And now you can see that I've got May in that same sort of composition and scenario. And here you can see that she is going through that same sort of range of motion. You can see dramatic lighting, some dramatic expression on the face here as well. And we only need 26 of these images. Now, if you're a seasoned iClone or Reallusion user, you know this is pretty much day one sort of render. But a new user level, this is also something that anybody can generate using default content, a couple of camera angles, and a little bit of pose and facial animation editing. Okay, so this can all be done in the modify panel and in the content that you're just applying to those from, say, the pose folder. So essentially, here you can see that Max and I were overdoing it at first and overtraining our LoRa's. We were using 65 images. And again, I spoke earlier about how we want this to be efficient. So when we create this render, we're only going to use 26 frames. So I can easily determine that by taking my in and out, which also adjusts on the lower part of the viewport for our flags here and our flags on the frame field of the actual timeline itself.
Hey,
So
James, sorry,
really,
sorry,
I can
man.
target
Quick note.
whatever frames I
Uh,
need.
are you able to move? There's a couple of Zoom windows. Are you able to move this to another screen? I think it's your chat window and maybe the Zoom panel. Like move it to another
Um,
screen. Do you have another screen or?
no, I'm actually rocking on a laptop.
Oh,
So
okay.
you can see that this is actually doable on a
Yeah, it's weird that it's
um,
popping up. It's never
pretty
done that for me.
small
So
spec. Okay.
yeah,
So sorry
nice.
about that. We'll go ahead and we'll talk again about rendering a little bit. Here at the top, we can go to render and render image. And you can see I've already got this docked over here as my render panel on the modify. And essentially, our modified panel is where we can determine what video or image size that we're actually going to be targeting. You can see I'm actually using 1280 by 720. Now, we can have a look at another LoRa set that's more of a portrait LoRa project that we've got set up. And Max and I have, found varied and better results when you pack in more pixels to the overall composition. So, for example, here in frame 20, we have more of that face in there. So there's more of that information being passed on to that LoRa. But maybe in frame one, her face is very small in terms of pixels. So you might want to consider this when choosing your aspect ratio and your frame size. But here we can also just tell this, hey, I want to render this frame range. And essentially, I can use PNGs or JPEGs. And here you have your frame size and your output. And again, this is all very basic. But if you come down to the bottom and select export, you can then go into a folder where you have many image sequences. And you could create a new folder and call this LoRa and then maybe May. And I'm going to call this May 01 because I've already done this once, right? So I don't want to get confused. But if I open that folder up and I then use the name May, MEI, here and select save, you can see that it's going to quickly generate these images and we're going to create this LoRa set. So let me show you a little bit more about what a full LoRa set sort of looks like here. And here we have the Camilla LoRa set that basically are that set of images. But we have a different set of images for May that have been generated from this project, which is why, again, you can build your own, you can use the Reallusion template. You really just need to focus on getting facial expressions and poses. And
You
this is
can
something.
also dial
Go
in
ahead, Max.
wardrobe and props and stuff like that too, guys. So if you're trying to go for a specific look or style or lighting, that's something you can totally add into it. Um,
Sure. And so once we have that LoRa set, you can see that our images are generated basically from what we've selected inside of iClone and the frame range that we're targeting. Okay. So this is really all that we need for our image sequence. So now that we've got that, we're ready to actually go spin up a RunPod. So now I'm going to go ahead and jump over to a web browser. And you can see that here again, you can find on the forum the LoRa project that if you go over there, you can easily grab that, or again, just kind of use our methods to build your own. So if we go back to RunPod, and I'll actually jump back out, you can see I've got a couple of RunPods up already. And that's because we're going to kind of walk you through setting one up. I'm going to then show you while that is setting up kind of the setup process for FluxGym, and then what that end LoRa result is going to do for you. And we're going to hand off to Max at that point after we set this up. But if you didn't follow along last week, of course, this is being recorded for you to be able to follow along with this process once again. So if you go to runpod.io and then also log in, again, in the previous webinar, we did this with our Google account. You'll have to set up an account if you haven't already, or if you didn't watch the webinar last week. However, once you're there, we're going to come over to our left-hand navigation and we're going to go to storage because you need to set up a new network volume. And again, RunPod is a cloud compute that's going to allow us to access a 4090, and we're actually going to generate our LoRa in the cloud as well. So to do that, we're going to come over to our new network volume. And you can choose where these GPUs are located, and you can see that there's lots of different options here on the right side and lots of different cards to choose from. We're going to target again Illinois tonight, so you can see that we've got places like Georgia and New York and North Carolina, Texas, but we're going to go ahead and target Illinois, and we want to name this. So I'm going to name this Flux Gym, and I'm just going to leave it as Flux Gym. And I'm going to go ahead and say 10 here for my gigabyte size. And I'm going to just create a network volume. And again, this is only going to be a total of 70 cents for now. So I'm going to go ahead and start spinning this up. So once we have this over here, we can basically click on it and we can deploy our pod with volume. So once we go to deploy, that's when it's going to ask us to go ahead and select that GPU. And again, I'm just going to go ahead and target a 4090. Actually, I have a 3080 in my laptop. So not the greatest main gear, but I'm going to go ahead and select this. So I've got a little bit more horsepower for what I'm trying to do with these 24 or 26 images. So again, here for our pod name, I'm going to call this Flux Gym, and this time LoRA. Okay, and maybe V1 for this, because we've already done this once. And this is going to allow us to come down and then select change template. Now, what you want to type in here is, again, Flux. And it's very important that you select the local lab Flux Gym LoRa training with QoS. So I'm going to go ahead and select that. And you can see that that's loaded that template here. And I'm going to come down and I'm going to go ahead and deploy on demand. Now, this is, again, what we refer to as spinning up, but we're now processing this pod. And again, last week, if you did join us, you saw that we had some issues connecting in some cases. So you can always know if a pod is connecting by going to the logs. And this is where it's going to start building out. And this does take a few minutes. And this is why we're pulling the Julia child tonight. And we're going to go ahead and show you that once it comes through this process, which takes about 20 to 30 minutes. And you can actually go to the details here, and you can actually watch the uptime for how long it takes to spin up a pod. Okay, so this is a really nice sort of feature of RunPod that you can just kind of get at a glance and check out how long it's going to take you to connect. And of course, the connection is here. And you'll see that it's telling you and prompting you over here in that accents orange that it's not ready. Okay, so when that's green, you're good to go. And we'll have a look at how we access FluxGym. And once that spins up and these logs have calculated and we have connected to that 4090 somewhere in Illinois, then we can connect FluxGym. Okay, so we're going to let this one go ahead and chill. And we're going to jump forward in time to the point of where that is. Okay, so when that jumps forward, and your connect ready, you can see that we've changed to green here. And so that allows you to not only access FluxGym to start building out your LoRa, which is what we're going to take these images and do now. And that's the magic of being able to maintain consistency and being able to generate multiple shots, multiple angles of a character in wardrobe with hair, makeup, and everything you need, and maintain that look dev. And also add things like flux realism and really enhance the look of this character. So we're going to do that by training in FluxGym. We're going to access what we actually train once that's done via Jupyter Lab. And that's a really easy way for you to grab this character DNA and pull that down. Okay, so first, once your pod is spun up, and you can see we're spinning up over here in the back, that we can go ahead and click on FluxGym. And when you click on FluxGym, that's going to take you over to Gradio. And Granio is basically a very easy step 1, 2, 3 process, but a very complex setup. So make sure that you understand that these steps need to be followed precisely. And certainly the settings and the advanced options that we're going to go over definitely need to be very precisely put in. And we'll also utilize ChatGPT to get some explanation and description of the character. So we'll be tapping in that information as well for our LoRa. So first, we're going to name our LoRa. And I'm going to call this May, and I'm going to call that V2. Okay. So basically, when our safe tensor or our LoRA file comes out, this is what that name's going to be. So this is what we're going to be looking for later in Jupyter Lab. But we're also going to need that trigger word, and trigger words are super important. Why? Because if you're doing anything with prompting right now, you know that those trigger words let you know when that LoRA needs to be combined with other LoRAs or how that's being used and called upon. So make sure that you have that in mind, basically through the character design process, and also just have it in mind for when we build the prompts later. So, of course, I'm going to use this character's name once again, May. And this is the default name of the character in the Realism CC3 Plus bases. So if you're looking for that in your old content, May is there. We also need to max train our epochs to only 8. Okay, so basically we're going to change that first value from 16 to 8. And that's super important as well, because when we actually start training, these 8 epochs that we are basically saying this is how much training we want is what we're going to process through. And that's going to be the next sort of time jump forward here on RunPod, where we're going to show you the end result for that. And we're going to hand that off to Max to start making the cool stuff. So essentially here, once you've changed that, you're ready to come down and scroll down a bit. And I am going to move my window once again over to here because I want you to make sure that you can see our advanced options right here at the bottom and our drop-down menu. This is something that you're going to have to make sure that you have a precise control of when putting in these advanced option parameters. So we're going to start with the learning rate. And you can see that there's some defaults in here. 8E4 is our default learning rate. We're going to change that to 5E-4. Okay. And then we're going to come over and we're going to change our guidance scale from 1 to 4.
No,
Okay.
no, we don't want to don't do that one, James.
I'm sorry.
Leave that at 1. It's your
Leave that at 1. I'm sorry.
every epoch needs to be 4 to 1 right there.
4 to 1. Correct.
Yeah, yeah, all good.
And
So
so
easier.
for our network dimensions, Max, do you want to go ahead and give them
Oh,
the breakdown
so
here?
yeah. Let's talk about it. So going back over there real quick to the save every in epoch, and let's
Sure.
lock that in at 1, and that's going to allow us to save every epoch. That's just going to let us lock that in. And so for our network dimensions here, we're going to run 16 for that instead of 4. And that's going to lock everything in. Before we scroll down any further, I do want to point out really quickly over there on the left side in your normal panel, you see where we have 512 there. So that's the size of your data set images. And so 512 is perfect for us. You can go up to 1024 by 1024. But what that's going to do is that's going to take about 4 times as long to train on this 4090. So for that case, for right now, we're going to leave that at 512. And I think you can, I mean, you can get a little bit better results out of 1024 by 1024, but depending on how important the LoRa is, you may want to just stick at 512, especially while you're processing for now. So, all right, so we're good there. Let's roll on down and we need to enable our batch here. Enable bucket, sorry, enable bucket.
Okay, so yeah, I was like, we're looking for the
Yeah,
bucket.
enable bucket, enable bucket. That's what we're looking
That's
for, the
just a
bucket.
checkbox. So you just need to
And
check that
so
off. But
what
it's
this
important.
does is really important. It's so like used to when this first came out, you had to like manually go size all your images to like 512 by 512 or 1024 by 1024. And the reason that we want to just like enable our bucket here is it's going to let you use image resolutions that are outside of that. And so while we're here talking about that, it's also important to note that you want to make sure that your images are like PNG, JPEGs, make sure they're at like 72 DPI. If you use your snipping tool for an image that you're trying to make, and that's going to come in at 96 DPI if you're mixing it with your image set. And just to be aware that that will break the process and cause your training to fail. So you also don't need really huge resolutions. Like there's not going to be any benefit if you render all this at 4K and try to train it at that because essentially the base models you're running with Flux weren't designed to produce images at that resolution natively anyway, so it would be useless. So we were enabling that bucket there, guys, so we can bring in all of like multi-sized images easily, and that just helps us out there. So now we're looking, and like this part, I feel like it's like that scene on Jurassic Park where you're like flying through trying to find like the security codes, but it's really not that scary. We're looking for minimum SNR gamma, And so the default recommendation for this is 5, and so that's what we're going to run. And you can see it's in the white paper information right above it. The next thing I really like to check here is multi-res noise discount. And so I run this at like zero point 0.3. That's kind of where my base setting for that is. And for multi-res noise iterations, I'm going to also put in 6. If you use one of these, you got to enable both of those buckets right there. And they're kind of easy because they're right beside each other. So from there, we have to set our noise offset, which is just one line below. And we're also going to use the recommended value of zero point 0.1. So the only real wild card you have to remember in this crazy world of numbers is the multi-res noise discount, which is zero point 0.3, and it doesn't really give you a recommendation there. So that's kind of what I was recommended. We've been training with that for a while and had great results. So the final thing that you're going to do is set your batch size. And since this card has like 24 gigs of VRAM, we're looking for our train batch size here. We're just going to run that at 2. If you had more VRAM, you could obviously crank this up and run a larger batch size, like you could run like 4, 8, or 16, kind of keep it at those
Absolutely.
numbers.
As
And
you
so
can see,
then, yeah, I'll let you take the reins
no,
there
it's
again,
it's
James.
okay. Go
Sorry about
ahead.
that.
That's the end
Um,
of all um,
yeah,
input for our advanced settings, right? So that's the only thing we need is that train batch size here at the end. And just make sure that you have that. But again, like Max said, if you have more VRAM, more power, you can definitely adjust some of these. But this is the recommended protocol settings for this. Now we're going to come all the way back up and we can go ahead and we can close this. And now you're ready to actually access those images. Okay, so here's where we're actually going to be putting in our data set. So we've already got our LoRA info from our step 1. Now we're looking at our step 2 data set, and we can drag and drop or click for those files here. Now, of course, I've navigated to the image sequence folder that we rendered, and I'm just going to select all of those and select open. Now, this is where we'll also implore ChatGPT. And of course, I like to use the versions where you can upload images because this is a great point for ChatGPT to give us a little bit of a leg up. So I can come over and add some photos. And I'm just going to grab a few of these, maybe a couple of full body and a nice sort of lit shot, and open 3. And I'm going to ask to please describe a physical description of this Asian female named May. And I'm going to include that, and ChatGPT is going to capitalize that. But basically, it's going to give us a description that's probably too long. And so I can just ask it to make that shorter. And so that's going to kind of make that more precise. And you can see that basically it's devoid of any background information. And I can copy and paste that. Okay, so I'm just going to jump back over into Gradio, and you can see that all of our images are loaded. Also notice by loading that trigger word or that pre-trigger word that that is going to be already in the beginning of each description. You want to make sure that that is maintained, and so I'm going to go ahead and copy that over, but I'm going to take out that dash and I'm going to use lowercase may. And what I like to do then is copy that again after caption 1 and just come down, and you're going to have to do this a total of 26 times. Sounds like something you should use AI for. But this is going to allow you to basically plug in your own description and make sure that trigger word is maintained for each one of these images. And so this is going to help that data set further know exactly what your wardrobe should be, exactly what your character should be. And this is a place that Max likes to put things like age or determination of other features. So Max, talk a little bit about that while I plug this last one in.
yeah. So like if I was trying to train something specific, like so you can define each image, but what we really found with these LoRa trainings that it doesn't make really much of any difference, honestly. If you use Florence or if you just give them a general description, the main thing that we try to do is to keep anything out of it that is, you know, like describing the background, because all I'm really trying to do is retain her identity and bring that over into the final output. And so, like, I don't like, I'm going to use it more as a general LoRa in a lot of different applications. And so I don't really find from the testing that I've ran out of the hundreds of LoRas I've made that it made any difference in terms of the results and the output. So that's kind of why we decided to run it this way with more of just a general description. If you're confident in the way you're doing and you feel happy with what Florence 2 does, you also can hit add AI captions with Florence 2 and it'll automatically do that. But you're also going to transition stuff like that black background that we put here and things like that into that image that you would need to go back and comb out of that if you don't want to bake that into your LoRa training per se. But yeah, so like if you're really want to go to that depth and you want to spend that time, you can totally have individual captions for each image or batch caption them with your API key in Comfy UI or anything like that. But from a simple point of just getting something up and working so you can play with and really being able to get great results out of it, I think the general training is really awesome, and that's why we like to deploy that. But so it looks like we've got everything locked in. We've got our name of
Good.
our LoRa, we got our trigger word locked in. We're training at 80 epics, and the reason I like to train at 8 is because I really only care about epic 6 and 7. Like anything past that, I think is really overtrained, and I wouldn't waste my time. I mean, if you want to, sure, render 16, but like I said, I'm scaling this up and typically rendering like or making like 10 or 12 lures at a time. And I like to make sure that I'm being efficient about it while my GPUs are up and not just training useless trainings I'm not going to use.
And speaking of training, that's what we're going to do for step number 3. And it's the most complex of all the steps. So you got to pay really close attention to this one because I know we've gone through a lot of information already, but this one is probably the hardest step of all. You hit start training and you click on that. Okay. And so essentially, that is where we're also going to time jump again, right, ladies and gentlemen? Because essentially, here at the bottom, our logs are going to start rolling again. And this is where, again, these epochs are starting to roll through. It's learning and it's starting to compile this LoRa. And what comes out of the other end is going to be a safe tensor. And like Max said, this will actually generate up to 8, but we target the 6th safe tensor file or the 6th LoRa file that comes out. So what actually happens after this is fully executed is taking us back to Jupyter Lab. So I'm going to go back to my pod just so you can kind of again see this process occurring. And I'll move this guy down here because again, we have our other pod that's now ready for this process that has spun up. And then our FluxGym LoRa pod that had already completed the process of going through that training. And so once that's ready, you can come over to Jupyter Lab when you go back to your pod. And this is where that character DNA is located. And this is where it starts to get fun and really super creative. And where you'll find that is going to be right over here on the left-hand side of your navigation in the outputs. And inside those outputs, as you can see, here's May 1 and May 2 that's cooking right now will be in that same Jupyter Lab folder. But if you dive down into that, you'll see here are our safe tensors that have been generated. And we have our 1 through 7, and then also this safe tensor. But number 6 and number 7 are the ones that Max and I are referring to. Yes, kids, 6, 7. So essentially what we're going to do here is right click and download that LoRa. And this is the birth of a LoRa. Once you download this file, and please do not navigate away from the page while this is downloading. This will affect your LoRa and it actually will break. So make sure once you click download that you give your PC enough time to get that safe tensor fully downloaded. You can go ahead and download 7 if you would like, but 6 is the one that we find is the most refined and the best trained. And again, not overtrained. But now you've got something that can plug back into that comfy workflow and, of course, the AI render plugin. So, Max, I've already passed this LoRa over to you. So you have my May LoRa. I'm going to go ahead and turn off my screen share and pass that over to you to show our Realusion family kind of what you do with the LoRa once you have it in your hands.
Awesome. Sounds great. Get my screen up. Everybody see that okay? I'll pull my chat window over to the other window real quick. Oh, I can move that one as well. Excellent. So I'll just show you a few results I've kind of got with it, and I'll go back through and talk a little bit about what I've done to kind of set this up. So just kind of going through, I brought the LoRa in, just kind of ran the same exact settings I really talked about last week, in terms of loading up our LoRa's and having everything tracked in it. Like I was cranking the strength of the realism up a little bit. And so the reason I want like a 6 or a 7 is because I'm not trying to maintain necessarily her 100% true CG identity with her hair the way it is there. I'm planning on blending it with realism or another LoRa to like mix in with a product or do really kind of whatever I want to do here. So in my mind, I don't really want it to be overtrained. I don't want to lock in everything to the truest of its intention, but what I do want to do is use my control net and use my LoRa to be able to take me through a wide range of prompts and different seed values to continuously kind of bake in that identity of May. And so while also making her look more realistic. So it's kind of a fine balance. And yeah, you'll get some seeds that maybe don't look exactly like her, or in the case that you don't plug in a LoRa, you may get really good control net, but you're going to get somebody that's totally different. And so I'm going to go through and I'll set this up again over here with Run Comfy and just kind of show you how what we have going on here and get everything rolling. So this is just regular Flux One Dev. I'm not even using Crea for this, just basic One Dev. So I'm going to leave my iClone project up, and what it is, I just have kind of a basic dance animation that I've thrown on the May character that we baked the LoRa out of. So it could really be any pose. For this particular one that I have dialed in just for the sake of time, I think I was at like frame 109. That's close enough. It won't really matter. It would probably transition okay as long as we update our depth maps, and we'll come through and do a little bit of that too in just a second. But I do want to show you kind of what's up with Run Comfy and how that's going. So essentially, all you got to do, guys, is just come in here, Run Comfy, where we have the Realusion AI render template that's already set up from Realusion. They had a little issue with a file download coming through. You know, it was a beta setup. It was kind of a first setup, and we wanted to show you that everything's been addressed and it's rock and rolling and ready to go now. So I can turn on any pod, just kind of launch things up. It's going to allocate those resources and launch it. It's going to pull all those models, ensure that you have everything you need. The only thing that I really need to do is make sure that I load my custom May LoRa, and I'll show you how to do that on this pod as soon as it pulls up. But yeah, so while we're sitting here waiting on that one to pull up, I have a second Run Comfy instance that's actually already connected to Realusion here. And so all you really have to do to add something to this, when you come in here by default, you're going to see your kind of home tab for your assets on the right. We're going to come in and I'm going to click models. I'm going to go down and I'm going to look for my LoRa's folder just like you would on a local installation. And you just have to drag that safe tensor in there and let it load into your file. So in this case, let's see where I put that at.
Don't lose the LoRa's.
Yeah, I may have lost the LoRa. It's all right. I'll pull it really quick. Where's it at? All right, guys, 1 second here.
Can always give it to you again.
Yep, you could. And so there is, just pulled it from Discord over there. Got my LoRa file. And so this one's still spinning up. We can go check this other one out again. And if I wanted to add this LoRa or really any other LoRa file that I may have, go back to the downloads again. There it is. It's the May V01. And since it's named different, I can bring it in anyways. So we just wait for that to download. You can see everything coming in on the right. And really, like I said, the only issue we had last time is that it wasn't downloading all the models. And so that's all been sorted. It's super easy. It's one click. You just kind of got to wait for everything to boot up to begin with. And then all we have to do is get our server ID up here, guys, and link that up. So for example, it kind of has a template that is provided on the Realism link for this and also in the description for it. So you have to come in and you need to take your server code right here. It's like basically server slash, and you're going to copy that. And that's the one tricky part about this that's honestly a little bit difficult. And you're just going to kind of paste that in. And I like to put it in the template, so it's basically just HTTPS // and then you paste this in, and it's -comfyui.runcomfy.com. So it's really pretty simple. Um, and then so what we would do is we'll come back with that to be able to link our Run Comfy up to iClone. So I'll just go on ahead and disconnect everything. So now I'm disconnected. Everything's down. My LoRa's aren't up. You see, they just disappeared. So I would come over here to our AI render settings tab under connection, and I'll switch from local down to LAN server. And I'm just going to paste that modified link into it and connect, and we'll see everything's going to link up and turn green for us there. And so that did automatically kind of drop my LoRa's back in there, but I don't really always necessarily trust that that stays linked like that. So I will need to kind of add those back really quickly. And so I'm just going to look for the realism LoRa, and you'll see there's lots and lots of LoRa's in here, and it's just anything that's been downloaded to this computer before. So there's all kind of stuff that, is definitely maybe not your content or what you would have downloaded. So I'm just going to look for my May LoRa really quickly. She should be right down in here somewhere. One thing I like about RunPod is you can kind of just control everything that's in there, and it's a little bit less noise than these public servers like this. So let me see if I can find May. There it is, May. Okay, awesome. So we can navigate through all of those public LoRa's and get to the ones that we specifically want. And I'm going to download that to 0.6, set that to 0.65, or sorry, 0.35 strength on the realism LoRa. And I'm going to set May to about 0.65 to start. I think that because her hair is, from CC3 and not CC4, that, we may want to drive our realism a little bit more. We may want to, 0.65. We may want to turn her down a little bit, her strength to about 0.60, and maybe crank the strength of that realism up to 0.35. And so then I'm going to want to dial in my depth map. And so by default, this would be set to full, and this would be set to mid shot like this. Pose would be set to 100%. And so the things that I would want to change about this, I'll show you, like it's just a little bit harder depth map here. And so I like to use something that's just like a little bit lighter than this. And I want it to be a little bit softer so that I can see more of her details and make sure that I bring that out in that final render. So we do not need our pose strength at 1.0. And in many cases, sometimes I'll even cut this off, but I do run it at a full range. And so I'm going to run just like 0.35, 0.30, like really low, just to kind of help hold her fingers intact and ensure that her arm pose is as I intend it to be. So I'm going to soften up this depth map. On depth map, we don't run a full range here, guys. We want to run like a partial range, just something so, like it's essentially 0 to 50%. And when it comes down to dialing this depth map in, we can actually go into portrait because it's a little bit closer to the camera, and we can adjust that near and far clipping plane to our satisfaction. But I think that looks really good right at 30. Just for curiosity, we can test 25 and update that, and we'll see that we're losing everything. So what that really probably tells me is I can probably run from like a range of 20 to like 30 and just have a real narrow kind of depth band there that's going to give me the most amount of detail um, that I can get even out of a pose that's a little bit further back in frame without going to a portrait view. I can still stay to that 1920 by 1080 base render. So I just have a few prompts. So I essentially just kind of honestly just use ChatGPT to create a whole page of prompts for me to drop in for this so that I could just work off of May and that same kind of structure we talked about last time of describing the shot, describing the character, making sure that we're calling those trigger words like May and realism so that these things get queued up whenever we run our workflow. Um, I also like to describe her clothing. I just kind of gave it rules for what I wanted. And, you can always get more detailed. You can write your own prompts, but I just wanted to kind of do a wide range of test samples and things that I wanted to run. So, I can really pick, any of these just to play and test and get used to the system. And so I'll just copy that and I'm just going to drop these in here so that you don't have to watch me type them this time like last time. Um, and I'll go down. Let me check that one more time. I just like to make sure I'm really happy with that depth map and that pose because I really care so much about the depth map. I think that's how you get the results that you want most of the time and really help maintain that identity and lock it in. So I'm running this at 1920 by 1080. You can totally run this at a different resolution if you want. You can run 720. If you're going to run 720, drop your steps down to 20 instead of 28. I like 28 for 1920 by 1080. I think it just kind of really does a nice job at that many steps. CFG, if you drop this down to like zero point 0.5, you're going to get harsher shadows. It's going to look a little bit cooler in most of your renders from what I've seen. You push this up to like 1.2, 1.3, things are going to get softer. They're going to get a little bit more dreamy. And it may lose a little retention, but it also looks really nice in the shot. The shadows are very, very nice. So I think you can drift that up a little bit if you want. For today, I'll run this at default settings, starting out just one. Denoise, I like to run it just straight up at one, but you could also back that off maybe to like zero point 0.8, zero point 0.9 if you wanted to on your denoise. Um, but I'm just going to fire this off and let it go.
Boom.
And so now that's linked up over to Run Comfy, and it's going to should show me that it's running in another tab, so that workflow is just cranking and everything is working for me. If it's the first time you run it, it's gonna go maybe a little bit slower. If it's not the first time you're running it, then things are going to be a little bit faster on that 4090. Like sure you can get any GPU you want to pay for this. I also teach a lot of university students how to do this type of thing, and they don't, they are fairly cheap about what they want to spend. So I'm trying to work on solutions with like an A5000 or A40s and even things that may not be the absolute best thing you can get your hands on, but they're awesome solutions for people that maybe can't afford to spend like $3 an hour to render videos while they're playing on iClone. And so I think it's about choosing the right kind of tool for the job. And if you're on a big professional movie set, then sure, going ahead and you know build a big H100 or H200 server, or rent a bunch of RTX 6000 Pros so that you can meet those deadlines faster. But when you're just playing or you're trying to learn these things or get access to it, I think the 4090 is really a great point where it renders quick enough that it's not too painful where you feel like you're waiting too long, but it also is an affordable way for you to start playing and having a good time, just making really cool stuff right here. Um, so, like I said, I think it does a pretty awesome job, like out of the box, even just without trying to push anything, like just kind of stay into those basic settings. I could totally change my pose, update my depth maps, update anything in my prompt that I need to, or just come over and, render it again. We can run that same one again and just get a different seed value. And sometimes that's half the fun too, is to let it play and, to let your imagination run with that scene and what you want to create and go in and tweak little things in your prompt and dial it in. And if you find a seed value where the character and the identity of May is really locked in, but you're still injecting that realism to it to bring it up to that ultra realistic kind of look, then I think it's a good idea sometimes to go back and switch to that fixed seed value and start exploring with playing with, some of your CFG settings, maybe dial it up to 1.2 or 1.3 and see how it looks when it's a little bit softer. Or, go in and fine tune your depth map settings a little bit or turn pose off entirely just so you can see, like maybe that not touching your latent image with anything else extra is the right move. And it's all about the pose, what's happening, the complexity. Once you start mixing in LoRa's, like one of the first product LoRa's I trained was Duke's mayonnaise. And it was really cool to play with that and see what it could do. And it might mess up some of the text and stuff like that occasionally. But I thought it was really, really fun. And the results that we got out of it, like where Camilla was holding a jar of Duke's mayonnaise and it looked like a perfect product commercial. I actually went and posted and showed it to Duke's mayonnaise on their social media page because I saw that they were making videos with AI, and I was like, I also train my AI with Duke's mayonnaise. So you never know. I mean, it's all kind of different stuff that you can train. Lots of different characters. You can try two at once. I will say if you're trying to use two characters at the same time, sometimes they will transition features from each other to each other. So you might have to seed search a little bit or fine tune your prompts and like actually drive past 100, which, like it's not outside of the realm of possibility for me to consider rendering, 16 to 30 images just to get a good base set of what I even like from what I'm creating. So don't be afraid to like once you get locked into something to, you know, if you're tired, you got some, you want to go to the grocery store, you got some errands to run, mash the casino and, make some, make sure you've got your images going and, just keep grinding. And, next week we're going to dive into video. So that's a whole new world. You also can do, you know, uh, video LoRa's too. So that's a whole nother world of excitement that you can where you can train video LoRa's, but that's a more difficult process. Typically, you need larger video files and more VRAM to do that. But I think get your feet wet, learn the concepts with Flux, and then start playing with like Quinn and all these new exciting things. And hopefully, who knows, WAN 2.2 Vase could be just around the corner. We don't know, but hopefully we'll see those type of features coming out soon for you guys to be able to play with. So I hope you guys are enjoying it and learning a lot about LoRa's and baking in your own character identity. And yeah, guys, stylistic. If you have stylistic characters and you don't want realism, dump that realism LoRa because I'm just injecting realism with that. So, that being said, I think there's lots of super competitive image generation options on the table right now, and I really love playing in the open source market without having to deal with API calls and stuff like that, or you know, training other people's models with my IP. So that's one thing that Real Illusions really made accessible to everyone, and I hope you guys are having fun, and I can't wait to see what you're able to do with this. James, did you have anything else you wanted to say about it here?
Just
Or
basically don't forget that anything can become a LoRa. It doesn't have to be
yeah.
a character. It can be a prop. It can be a location. It can be many different things that allow you to basically inject that low range adaptation model into many different areas of whatever you're trying to create, whatever's in that composition. So don't just stop at training LoRa's with your characters. You can train them for anything. So really think outside the box, color outside the lines. And like Max said, we'll be back next week to talk a little bit more about video to video workflows and kind of where we're going with that.
Cool. We all good, guys?
Think
Yeah, I
so?
think so.
Wow, look at that
Oh, I,
time.
I did.
Questions?
Let me say, can I say one more thing about vehicles? So, like, you totally train vehicles and everything, guys. Like, I've got GTRs and all kind. Like, me and James are big into cars. Like, I got Hellcats and he's got a Corvette, and we trained our own cars. Like, we train anything and everything. Like, environments that Flux maybe doesn't understand well, like ancient century type stuff. Things that aren't real in general. Anything that you need to help it with, like whenever you see it falling flat or not able to achieve what you want, that's where I either train a LoRa or I go into Flux context to be able to do a little bit of touch up to it or adapt it or even drop it into Photoshop and hit it with generative fill for little things like, use the tools as long alongside the new tools that you have to play with.
It's all
So,
a bag of tricks, and don't throw out any of the old tools that are tried and true. Work all of this into your pipelines and your workflows. And so nothing is out of bounds when you're creating and generating in this nature.
So do you guys have a LoRa for your James?
We
yeah,
do.
me and James both have LoRa's.
You're looking at it right now. I'm not here. Yeah, no, we absolutely do. Both that and we also have our voices cloned. So
Oh, nice.
absolutely, there is actually a much better version of me that speaks just as well and with a southern inflection.
Right
Oh
on.
yeah.
Well, awesome. Thanks for that, guys. And just so everyone knows, we're going to have a little bit of a Q&A here. Any questions you have for either James, Max, or myself, feel free to put those in the Q&A section there. We already have a bunch of questions available here. So we're going to get started on that and try and answer as many questions as we can. So let's go ahead and do that. Right off the bat, we have one from Christian Morris. Oh, he just posted the link for the forum link. Thanks, Chris. Um, Alton Glass asks a question. What's the determination in the LoRa training image ratio 26 to 41?
Through ex Really, it's about more of an efficiency game for us because we were training lots of LoRa's, and through extensive training with CC characters, we kind of realized that when we trained them past like 40, like 41 still looks a little bit CG, but it looks like a really nice CG. Like if you're going for that look, I think it's very nice at 41, but we think 26 like allows it to blend with realism a little bit easier. And also, whenever we push things past it to like 76, we were taking 3 times as long to train the LoRa's. And we found out the results weren't any better. And in fact, they were maybe like more ambiguous in what was coming out of the output.
Yeah, time is money. So we try to be really efficient with our workflows. And then on top of that, if you're going for something like a more secret level Love, Death, and Robots look, sometimes you might want to overtrain a little bit because Max is right. You'll drive a little bit more towards that full CG, but a nice mix of realism kind of baked in there.
Very cool. Thanks for the question, Alton. That's a good one. Um, Christian asks, what's the ratio of full body to close-ups for the LoRa creation?
So you can kind of split that up. It really depends on what you're trying to achieve. If you really care about your character's full wardrobe, like for example, if they're wearing cowboy boots, you might want to make sure that those cowboy boots are visible in at least a couple of your camera angles, right? So you can play with your cameras. Obviously, iClone is very robust and very easy to determine that. And again, don't forget, you can flip that aspect ratio and go. 720 by 1280 and now you're a vertical. So if you're really trying to get a better idea of how many poses or full body poses that you need, it really determines if you actually need that lower part in your composition. Otherwise, we like to focus on the face and really make sure that our faces get as many pixels as possible.
Right on. Quick comment from Oleg in the chat. He said, when you train, make sure you specify render in the prompt. In this case, you will not need negative prompt with LoRa. Do you guys find that true for your own workflow as well? If you type in
You
render
don't
in the prompt?
you don't let's see. So I don't really put render in the prompt per
Hmm.
se. Let's see. What was that? What's the exact question there? I'm trying to break that down.
If you
Let's see.
specify render in the prompt, then you don't need a negative prompt with the LoRa. I've never
Oh
tried that
yeah.
myself either, so I'm
Um,
kind of curious.
so I'm mostly working with Fluxwood, and I'm kind of like inside of the workflow filtering the negative prompt out anyways before it injects in the K sampler. So I never really worried about it because I'm already filtering it out
Right on.
with a
Okay.
node
Yeah, James
or a
mentions
zero
Flux does not
node.
need negative prompts, so.
It doesn't, but the control net does.
Hmm.
So like if we're going back to say like run comfy here, like I'll just show you up here at the top. So like the way we're running it, we need to pass that negative and positive prompting all the way through our control net chain here. And then we're just zeroing out the condition
Okay.
before we send the negative prompt in. So we still send everything through the positive side, just kind of let the negative side happen and don't really so much care about it that much.
Would it matter if you just took out the negative at all, or?
It needs it to pass it through the control net models,
Okay.
but that's essentially where I'm. If there's a way to do it, we'd love to see it. You know, through drop the workflow. We'd love to check it out.
Cool.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's go on to the next question for now then. From Majo. Can I use an RA?
Use
RA?
what?
Can I use in RA? I'm not sure what RA is referring to here, but okay.
Yeah,
We'll
I'm not.
move on. Maybe, can you clarify that for us? For now, we'll go on to the next one, Marquis Miller. Can this work with anime slash cell shaded style? If so, can
Sure.
we have a segment variation of this? Yeah.
Absolutely. So again, any style can also become a LoRa. So let's say that you might, love a specific art style, that is anime from a specific artist or a specific studio. You can always train a LoRa that literally is that. It's a stylized LoRa. So that style can also be added in. So much like we're using Flux Realism to drive these characters kind of beyond the CG aspect to a more photoreal render or deeper render, basically that could be added in. So absolutely, you can go to any length to kind of combine those LoRa's together. And if you develop that on your own, you again only need 26 images to do so.
Absolutely. Cool stuff. Thanks, Marquis, for the question there. We got a couple more questions from Alton. First, does the LoRa training data also include full body and details like hand or mainly the face?
So
I
yeah,
think it's a good idea to do those things. You know, because if you have a character like it's not necessarily always, you know, just a female character like May or a normal character like Camilla. It could be like a giant warrior with, you know, like a orc warrior with huge arms and, you know, like exaggerated features. And so you want to show like a good range if you're trying to really lock in like a specific wardrobe. And like that's how I like to do it. I like to train the character to the wardrobe like that I'm going to try to output. You can go more general, but if you're trying to stay consistent like across multiple shots, we found that if we don't like train it to the wardrobe, then you get little subtle nuances. It can be, you know, you could say, you know, she's wearing a black shirt, but you know, that black shirt could be three different black shirts across three different frames unless you lock one in and then switch to like flux context or something like that.
How about for the
Where you
hands? Like we
can,
had last webinar last Friday, we had a little bit of a hand issue at the beginning.
yeah, let me see if I can get us some nice hands here. Um, your depth map really goes a long ways to controlling those,
mhm.
honestly, more than I would say like anything.
Hmm.
But it isn't, I don't know if the Lauras would so much help you with that. Like if you get like manly hands or something like coming in, you might want to inject like female hands or, you know, woman hands, you know, something like that. Like anything that it would understand that would maybe like, or feminine features in the hands, you know, like you can try to positive prompt that, but I
Hmm.
think you're better off to try to have a model that reflects that or, you know, control net that reflects that in the depth map, comparatively.
Just
Let me
reminds me
see
of
if I can.
Seinfeld with the man hands.
Yeah, I want to soften that up just a little bit. But I'll render it again, but just with a different pose.
And of course, what Max
That's
is
close
still
enough.
doing there is kind of adjusting those clipping planes. And for any of the old school iClone users out there, it works just like any clipping plane that you've encountered from that virtual camera sensor back, right? So you're adjusting those same sort of parameters that are giving you those two rectangles in the field of view. And when you need hands or you need things to be softer or more subtle or more defined, again, that depth map we live and die by because it's really going to define that shape. And when you combine that with that positive prompt of realistic fingers, high quality hands, high quality fingers, this is how we're going to get the best result.
And if you get it, and if you don't get it, like, I mean, there's no guarantees that it's not going to flip her hand or give me an extra finger or something like that. Like that can happen. But that's where I touch, like if that's the only thing that's wrong with it, I'll go hit it with generative fill in 2 seconds and be done.
Hmm.
And just like move on to my render workflow for video. And even if I have to load that back up for my base image, for image reference in the video workflow, I can do that. I don't mind cleaning some things to ensure that base image plate is exactly really kind of what I want it to be from a starting point.
Hmm.
Um, I guess that would be really my kind of my biggest take on that. And like where your pose comes to help you is like really more with like when you're animating it. Like if you want somebody like a character to spin around in a circle, like you can link like between the depth and the pose and a nice blend. It's easier for it to understand what's happening instead of, maybe like you get some crazy thing like off the ring or something or some type of horror movie where the head's like turning around backwards in the middle. And
I
that
think
does
that's
happen.
Exorcist.
Like I was working on this one shot with like having a bird land on a rooftop. And I had some results that looked really great, but what happened with it is like out of that render, so I think her strength is a little bit too strong here. But what happened with is the bird would land perfect, but it would just turn the wrong direction or do something weird like that. And
Hmm.
that's where like getting that depth map locked in, being able to transfer that from CG to like live action, like really helped me kind of nail that shot down and get a the better result we wanted instead of the ensuring that the so that the bird would turn the right direction essentially.
And
So
at a
interesting
base
how the depth
level,
map is so important, eh?
yeah, and at a
Yeah.
base level, don't forget edit motion layer
Hmm.
for those hand poses. And that hand dummy inside of edit motion layer that lets you pose fingers and also the palm by left clicking and dragging on that. Quick way to get fist, quick way to get thumbs out or properly placed because that's going to be something that is going to drive you crazy. But iClone at a base level as an animation tool again gives you that pose control and edit motion layer is a very quick and easy way to get access to that through the modify panel.
How about tattoos? You guys worked with tattoos at all? Alton's asking a follow-up question there.
It can hold tattoos to an extent, but that's kind of like text and writing. That's kind of its weakness. I
Hmm.
would say to be on the lookout for like probably shifting more to like the new control net with Quinn that literally just came out this week. So, like that stuff's fresh and hot, but it's a little better with text maybe than especially Flux 1D right out of the box, you know.
Also, a very dedicated LoRa that really, showcases, if you have a neck tattoo or, a full arm sleeve or something like that. Make sure that you do maybe throw in some of those additional 27 to 41 images, right? That are showcasing that specifically from multiple angles, multiple lighting scenarios, and then make sure that that's part of your prompt when you go forward.
Cool. Yeah, Oleg's just mentioned when you want to train a flux with a Caucasian female, use the Asian woman prompt. Otherwise, you'll get a cleft chin on your girl with that's just what Flux seems. So found that interesting. By the way, guys, I'll send the chat. There's a few good tips in the chat as well that some of our users are giving out here. So we'll also send the text for this chat so you can go through that and get some additional tips for your workflow. James mentions he's working on adding a tattoo to his personal LoRA. James, you got some tattoos, don't you?
Only the ones you can't see.
Oh, just
So
just the tramp stamp. That's the only one.
Yeah, that's the
Okay.
one. It's a full body transfer.
Full
like with a
body.
tattoo, I would expect it will maintain your tattoos pretty well, but if you have small text or like small detail, it
Hmm.
could, you could get results like this where like it doesn't hold like the real mayonnaise and the text well enough on that. But that's just a 512 LoRa of Dukes and rendered at, 1080 with Camilla. So, um, you can get pretty good results. And this is just Flux 1D. I did this months and months ago, but you know, this would be an easy fix for me to come back and touch that logo up before I send it over to render it to video or anything like that. So,
Right on.
that's kind of an example of something that I think would have a similar behavior to like a tattoo.
Absolutely. And then also, Max, bring that image back just for a second, if you don't mind.
Oh,
I just
uh,
wanted to point out again the really nice fingers and then the realism and more of a commercial type shot, and a render that you might be attempting to go for a more commercial look for a client. And so that combination of the Duke's LoRa and the Camilla LoRa, and then also like what we were just saying, just really nice hand posing for the grip on that prop, really kind of sells the entire composition. So these are kind of the greater sum of all things.
Right on. And just following up on that, another question from Philip Lemon here. Can you train a LoRa on a set to get consistent backgrounds?
Absolutely. So
Yeah.
Max was just talking about, kind of a small piece that we put together that was based in the 1700s, and it was in Iceland. So the models and the LLMs don't know what those kind of huts or locations look like. So you can't really prompt that. You'll get
If
really crazy results.
if I have the ability to have like real plates, like from a film or something like that, I might train my LoRa to kind of get similar results to what I want. But in many cases, if it's a very, very, very serious shot where it matters that much, I'll typically take the plate that I want, and if I'm trying to make an alternate shot, I'll use something like context so that I really can ensure that it's true to what I'm trying to create for another angle, another shot angle for that back plate. But you can get very, very convincing results if you have a little bit of ambiguity and you just need it to feel like it's the same scene. That's very much achievable. But like can I take like Flux 1D and just like pretty much rotate this thing around like a HDRI? Not so much. But we can definitely lock in seeds and even use control net values like with the background that I want. And then sometimes I'll drift down my control net to like 0.35 or zero point 0.3 and let the AI dream a little bit more to help me lock in that alternate angle if I'm having trouble to like achieve it. But if you have good source footage and you have good backplates, you can do amazing things with it. But just the LoRa on its own will not do that for you. Like, so I've trained the school like around like images from the university inside of our building, the Creative Media Industries Institute. And so, like with the LoRa just on its own, if I just fire it off, it just creates new and different rooms that look exactly like that building, but they're new versions of it. Like
Uh,
it might be a new classroom that is very similar that has extra TVs or exhibits the same carpet and styling. But like I said, it might be a different room.
yeah, Oleg in the chat just mentioned, or you can use a real background image in iClone and limit the creativity to zero point 0.5. Is that plausible?
Yeah, yeah, that's plausible.
Okay.
Sure.
All right. So we'll go to the next question from Michael here as well. Thanks for that tip, Oleg. So seeing that there's so many advanced options in the RunPod setup, is it possible for you to provide us with a default flowchart for the RunPod setup, which shows us the exact options to choose from as the default so that we can develop this from this default?
Yes, that definitely is very possible. Let me check on my little on my comfy over here and make sure. Um, Change timer. Give me
Yeah,
another hour.
Max does have those specs, kind of each one of those advanced
So
options pulled out.
yeah,
Let me
Okay.
speaking of that, while we're here right now, I did want to give you guys a little bit of heads up while you're playing with if you're playing with the template for RunPod versus RunComfy. So I did notice something this week. Like I had essentially about 70 of my students testing this template and to like find out any troubles that they ran into. And one of the biggest things we ran into was like on Hugging Face. Like when if you haven't created like once you've created your Hugging Face account, it's a good idea to go back to this Black Forest Labs Flux One dev page and make sure that you've agreed to the license agreement for it. And I'll show you what that looks like so you can just ensure, just come up here and type in Flux One dev. And this is or actually sorry, we don't need Crea, we just want regular. But yeah, let me show you that this really quick. Once it says gated model, you have been granted access to this model. And also another tip when you're naming your access tokens, don't put any dashes or spaces or make these names really long, or it can cause it to fail the authentication and not download all your models. correctly to the RunPod. And so I had a lot of students that run into frustration with that because they just did simple things like that I didn't necessarily um think of because I mostly work with a lot of Linux systems, so I always use camel text and I don't like put spaces and dashes and stuff like that just because my VFX teachers like beat it into my head early not to ever do that. But yeah, for this particular case, this could help you have a good time instead of a bad time. So hope that kind of helps as a last minute tip there for that. Um,
Looks like it saved Carolyn here, so she
Great.
pulled out
yeah.
her hair trying to solve this problem. So that's good for her. Um,
Yeah.
right on. Another question from Michael here. Can you please explain in a layman's language what exactly a LoRA does? Does it have to do with only getting images? I guess just in general, how does that really translate into videos or 3D for our character creator? Um, can't we
So
really, yeah, just go for the layman's terms there.
with AI video, most of the models you're going to run these days, the first image is the most important thing, like that first frame. And so we're actually going to lock in that first frame with our intent with something like Flux or Quinn or even like One 2.2. Now people are doing image renders with that. So we want that first frame, that image to be as perfect as possible. So I say the image is basically 95% of the workflow. Once you've got your first frame image, the rest of it is just transitioning those same ideas into video and having enough horsepower to get through the back end. So we're going to turn around, we're going to lock in that first image, and then we're going to use a blend of like vase control net. So we'll use animated depth maps and animated post control in a blend to help control and ensure that we can get the intent that we want. So Juan 2.1 like is very sensitive to prompting. Like, so you have to be actually kind of careful not to override even your control net and all the hard work you've done in iClone to design that kind of base setup. Because, one of the first things I ran into with doing that is I was rendering lots of Camilla videos. And in a couple of them, I had put like, I called her a 27-year-old girl instead of a 27-year-old woman. And she looked like she was 13 to 16 instead of 27, just off of having that one word in the prompt.
Hmm.
So you kind of, but that also means that you can inject things like lightning and visual effects and stuff like that quite easily with Juan. To the point where you have to actually like I find myself constantly putting like subtle lightning or subtle flames, the small tiniest flames imaginable on the campfire, just to try to get it not to go like overboard with the VFX. And the output.
In
Right on.
layman's,
But
What was that,
hopefully
James?
that answers.
I said in layman's terms.
Yeah,
Okay.
in layman's terms.
Yeah.
We're gonna do the same thing but with video, and you're gonna need a bigger engine. That's what we're gonna do. There's layman's terms.
All right. Hope that helps you out, Michael. If you want some more elaboration, just let us know. We got a few more questions here to go. One from Carolyn White asks, can you explain again, real quick, why it was important to use the Safe Tensor 6.7 version instead of 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5?
Six,
Awesome,
seven.
awesome.
Yeah. So we feel like that those are the the best trained versions. They're not um overcooked or overtrained, and essentially this allows you to kind of have a good middle ground of not going too far into the CG version of the character that you're actually training from. But also not go under training and not giving enough information. So somewhere around the 6, 7 point, and usually the sixth one is the one we feel like is the most solid balance for the training, for you to be able to kind of then take that LoRa and then add additional LoRas or look dev to that to get a different kind of look and feel, but maintaining that consistency. And Max, would you agree?
Yeah, totally. 100%.
I
Um,
concur.
th- Carolyn's one of our students at Georgia State as well. So hello,
Yeah,
Carolyn.
don't let her front with
Doing extra homework.
extra credit, five
Yeah.
points.
She's
She's
an
not my
undergrad
class.
taking the MFA AI cinematography class, so she is in here doing homework. They start Laura's next week,
Oh, wow. Nice.
so
Okay.
getting ahead of the curve.
That's
Good
hilarious.
stuff. Um, Jose Inacio asks, wondering about RunPod versus RunComfy. Do we need to use both, or can we just do everything on RunPod?
You can pick whichever one you're more comfortable with and what gets you to the end result faster and what you like to use. It's really your choice. You don't have to run both. I'm running both because, well, if you want to run Flux Gym, you're probably going to want to run that in RunPod. You can also run it locally, guys. You can let me minimize this real quick. So you can install this through Pinocchio and just run this on your own local GPU if you want as well. If you have 20, like you don't even have to have 24 gigs of VRAM, but so that's totally an option. It's gonna fire up locally for me right there. But so I don't, like I said, I was doing a lot of local training, and then I just got tired of waiting around, not being able to use my computer while I was tied up, and so I went from essentially running a bunch of these locally to like scaling this up to running tons of run pods to just like blast through like big stacks of them.
That's why we call him
So
Moneybags Max, because he just spends all his money on run pods and
No, nobody calls him
I
that.
know I'm gonna run. Nobody calls it. I'm gonna run out of
Nobody
money
calls
on
him
these
that.
run pods. Not really. They're really affordable, honestly. Like if I had to
yeah.
go buy 8 RTX 6000 Pros, like that'll break the bank. But renting them at a very nominal fee and wearing their GPUs out instead of your own
Hmm.
sometimes is a good idea.
Absolutely. Okay, a question from Slater Lewis. Is there a CC4 project for training the LoRas?
So yeah, there's one available on the forum, so you
Oh,
can
form. Yeah.
definitely grab that there for the real illusion
It's for
project.
iClone, and you can go in and mark like keyframes throughout your animation and just it'll render out those specific keyframes. It's very useful.
Very
Um,
easy. You can also entertain, doing this with step frames and transition curves that are just popping between those positions. And then also another pro tip is if you put your LoRa's together and you're actually moving the character and not the camera, be sure you turn off physics for everything because essentially hair or any soft cloth like skirts or anything like that will actually inherit those physics if you're moving the character, and you'll end up with some pretty interesting images for your Loras.
Right on. And just for everyone who wasn't here earlier in the webinar today, I put the link for the forum up on the chat, and that's going to give you all the information for the update coming on Monday. So make sure you check that out. Okay. Anonymous attendee, how can I get more better lighting?
Definitely there's a variety of lighting tools inside of iClone. My favorite being the volumetric lighting. You can get things like God rays. You can definitely get a lot of contrast. Certainly the visual tab will help you with that. You have image-based lighting, HDR, and of course global illumination available to you. Not to mention the usual suspects of directional lights, point lights, and spotlights all that have specific shadow qualities that can be cranked up to 4K and really give you nice defined lines for your shadows. And don't forget to turn on some ambient occlusion because really where there is light, there is not light. So that ambient occlusion is going to also help define those edges. But make sure you're not turning on depth of field because that's going to give you some haloing around your depth map. So be sure you're not doing that.
Right on. Cool. Lots of tutorials on the website for those of you who want to learn more about the lighting stuff.
For sure.
Question from Manuel Roy. Is there a way to train LoRa locally with my own RTX 4090?
yes, exactly what I was just showing. Let me fire another render off, and I'll minimize this. So they make a Pinocchio installation of FluxGym that you can just install locally on your own computer, and it runs great with a 4090. You can run it at maximum settings, just run 2 for your batch size, like we went through today. Probably don't want to go up to 4. But you just come in here and it says support from 12 gigs of VRAM once you've installed it all locally, and you can fire it up. It's going to launch everything. And then it's basically just going to have that exact same interface that we went through in RunPod. It'll just all happen locally, and it'll dump everything out into wherever you tell it to, and to dump those files locally, essentially. But you can see
Cool.
it looks exactly the same. Um,
Same steps, same settings.
If
Same
you
work.
have less if you so this is open for local installation too, guys, all the way down to like 12 gigs of VRAM. So, you don't have to even be on a 4090 for this. So like it's pretty forgiving.
Good stuff. Question from Tim Ehlers here. Which control nets does the plugin support? All of them?
So, it depends whatever you set it up to in your custom workflow, but Flux, the way we have it currently set up right now, it's running depth and canny and pose. And so you can switch between those as well. And so pose, like there's all different types of control net that you can pipe into from Comfy, but Real Illusion also supports through their own custom control net, they support um, normal maps for some models as well, like when you're trying to go beyond those offerings. So let me see if I can find that. Someone was asking for the link. Flux Gym, Pinocchio. I installed it so long ago that I gotta look this up, guys. Like to be honest. But you have to install Pinocchio first. It's free, and then you can install Flux Gym basically to that. I would basically just look up local Flux Gym installation for that one, or we can see if we can, get you guys some links in the forums for you to check out. I want to make sure I give you the right one. I don't want to just go grab one out of thin air and hand it to you for something that I did months and months and months ago.
Right on. Okay, we
Um,
got a few more questions here. We'll do those right now. One from Nikhil. Did you folks discuss eyes at all and how you can add some life to them? Have you focused on that at all before?
Yeah, so you totally can. There's lots of expression settings in iClone that you can add to the face that can bring it to life, or you can also do that with mocap, and you can inject that also into your prompt if you're really trying to focus on, the expression and what the face is doing. If you can transition that into your control net, then that's going to allow you, to, hopefully bring across the intent that you want out of that render.
Okay.
Um, but that would be my greatest tip would be to let your animation, guide that through through like so actually it does like this version of pose is open pose, so it doesn't track facial expression, but some versions that you could consider tapping into your custom comfy workflow would be like DW pose that actually does track some of those facial features. But I think you will also see that you can get a lot of those through depth and even coming back in and turning on like your edge maps. So you'll see that if you add edge,
Hmm.
that's gonna, you can dial in, edge tracking a little bit too, and that might help you if you're not getting the results that you want or feeling like it's transitioning those facial features. Also, if it's not coming across, I adjust like I have the strength just at 50%, but that's not how I run this all the time. Like I'm constantly like pushing and pulling these things in different directions to get the results that I want, whether I want it to dream more by dialing it back to like 0.35 or whether I want to try to enforce this control net and really just like if you push it all the way to 100, you're going to get bad results. You don't want to do that. Like don't go past like 0.65, zero point 0.7 in like extreme cases, but you're gonna cook your image if you push it too far. And you'll lose the realism 100%.
Right on. Um, let's see here. We'll do a couple more questions. Oleg mentions that Flux even follows wrinkles if your character has those enabled. So very
That's cool.
cool wrinkle maps in iClone
Yep.
character creator.
Yep.
Um, Michael asks, you did not say if you can provide us with the flow chart we can or have to download the flow chart.
The workflow?
So for the advanced settings for RunPod, yes, we can
Okay.
provide that. Max, if you want to provide them with just that image of all of the different advanced setting values that you have,
Hmm.
that would be great.
Yeah,
Let
that
me
one was a
see if
little
I
tricky
can.
for me too.
So it is something that after you do it once or twice, believe
Hmm.
it or not, you'll get really used to kind of plugging those in. And I know it's a lot of fields to kind of sort out, but we do have that broken down. Those values will commit to memory pretty quickly. And like we said, a lot of those are actually baked into the explanation there. So you can actually see, and that helps you navigate when you're doing like the minimum MSR gamma and things like that, that are a little bit more confusing than say you're, just turning on enable bucket or, throwing in a batch size. So that does help kind of keep you as a true north when you're kind of doing that. But Max does have those broken down, and we're happy to share.
Right on. Thanks, guys. We'll get that all wrangled up and send you
Yeah,
guys a big package with the chat
I'll share
There
it
you
with you
go.
like
flow chart.
this.
Yeah.
Um,
So we kind of simplify that for you,
Oh, right on. Okay, cool. Gotcha.
even for you, Kai.
Yeah.
but yeah, like, I can totally share these. That's no problem. And then
I'm a
this
few
one as well
few
that has
pennies
all the
short of a
settings.
dollar.
But yeah,
Um,
I mean, even if you're watching now, feel free to screenshot it and grab it. That's all the settings right there. We can also provide you with it. But if you're just like, I want this right now, just screenshot it. You know,
yeah, we'll probably send it to you
not I've
guys as
never.
well
We'll
later.
send it to you
Yeah.
officially. But if you're like, I want this right now because I'm gonna go play, it's ready for you.
All
But that's
right.
the
And
settings.
final question here goes to Nikhil again. Are there any models now that offer UHD and a log color space without having to use something like Topaz to UPRES?
Hmm.
UPRES.
Um, Upres is still the game. Most of these things are trained at 1280 by 720 right now. To be honest, like you can force them, like I can force Flux One Dev to render at 1080 without much issue. But if I want to try to use like context at 1080, you get weird results. So you have to go back to on their dev models, you have to go back to 720. I haven't really got to extensively dive into Quinn. My students have been really liking that. So I'm excited to start really, really pushing those things. Um, but like I said, we're just not at that point. Like right now, you're in AI, you got to think like 720 is the new 4K. Currently in the open source market right now, and it's been that way for a while. Everybody's like, give me 1080, but you're gonna need a lot more VRAM to do that.
Max and I are
4K would
also
be
going to
awesome,
be
but
we're going to be selling 720 as the new 4K t-shirts after the webinar. So be sure to log in and
uh,
grab those.
it really is like so you can upres. You don't have to use Topaz Lab, even though it is the best. Like I'm not gonna at all hate on Topaz Lab because they make a fantastic product. They make what I would consider to probably be the best upreser out there. But from a free standpoint, like you can totally use the built-in upresers and Comfy UI if you don't have a license for that yet.
Right on. Okay, cool. That looks like the last question we got. So awesome. Good stuff. Thanks so much, everyone, for attending today's webinar. Got some really good feedback in the chat. I'll save what we have right now and send it out to you guys later. Um, as always, we're going to be sending you a video as well. So if you missed anything, you can check out the video. We're going to send it to you and review that video at your own leisure. I think we're about ready for the weekend. What do you guys think?
We are
Oh
we are
yeah.
definitely ready for the weekend.
Anything you want to say to sign off?
Yeah, just be sure that you guys check us out at www.actorcapture.com if you want to see some of our production work, some of the things we've done on movies like Lyle Lyle Crocodile, The Electric State, or Suicide Squad. And we've got some other exciting things happening out there in the world, so be sure to stay tuned for what's happening with Actor Capture. And as always, you can find Max and I both at Georgia State University at the Creative Media Industries Institute where we're teaching innovation, new workflows, and certainly the Real Illusion ecosystem tools.
If you got cool projects, reach out. We're always interested to hear about cool things to be a part of. So
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Dean, do you wanted to know actorcapture.com? Maybe you just want to
yep.
put that in the chat just so everyone has it
Sure.
before we and I'll sign off here. Oh, Carolyn already put it there. Okay.
We have our students kind of working overtime right now.
Yeah, no
Thanks,
kidding.
Carolyn. 5 extra points.
Right on. Okay, so again, thanks so much everyone for attending today. Lovely to have you all here again. Make sure to tune in again next Friday. We're going to be doing some AI video rendering, some really cool stuff, and you can sign up for that on the webinar site as well. same place you signed up for this today's webinar. We'll probably send you a link to sign up as well at some point through the week. So make sure you look out for that. And as always, fill out the feedback form so we get more topics that we can discuss and you guys are interested in. Yeah, so I think I'll sign off, everyone. Good to see you. Thanks so much, James and Max, for being with us again. I know it's a little bit later there on the East Coast, so yeah, I'll have a good Friday night, anyways.
Will
And
do.
adios to
Oh
everyone
yeah.
else in the world here. Good afternoon, good morning, wherever it is in you are. I know in Korea it's in the morning right now. Someone was from Korea, but yeah, I'll say goodbye from Calgary, and we'll see you guys next week, hopefully. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys. See you
Thanks,
later.
guys.